Hey guys, Steve here from Holding Vigo County Accountable. As previously mentioned, we are going to be bringing in candidates to do interviews for some of the different races in our upcoming elections. Today we have prosecutorial candidate Terry Modesitt. Terry, what can you tell us about your position that you currently hold, how long you've been there, and a little bit about what you do?
Okay. I've been the prosecutor now for 3 terms, so a total of 12 years. This will be my 4th term if I get elected this November. I manage 53 employees. That's one thing that people don't understand, but my main job is that I enforce the laws of the state of Indiana, and I do my best to keep the people of Vigo County safe.
All right, so for somebody who doesn't understand what the prosecutor does, and I'm going to ask you some hard, tough questions in a second about some of what you've done, okay? But for someone that's watching that doesn't understand what a prosecutor does, police officer makes an arrest.
Correct.
Person X goes to jail, and then eventually goes in front of the judge, and you do what?
Okay, what happens is after the police make the arrest, then they bring the paperwork to our office. Then we look it over to determine if we think there was probable cause to file a criminal charge at that point.
Okay.
Then it goes to a judge that determines if there was probable cause. If so, there's a hearing then to read the defendant the charges, set bond, which the judge does, the prosecutor does not. And then there's deadlines set for an upcoming trial, ultimately, at the end of the case. If we take the case to the trial and there's a conviction, it's up to the judge for the sentencing, but we're allowed to recommend or at least request what we want to see happen. Or there could be a plea agreement. If there's a plea agreement, we can recommend in a plea agreement what we want to see happen with the case. The defense can agree to that or disagree. If they agree, ultimately then the judge decides if he's going to accept that plea.
So for those who are watching, I want to just clarify this just a little bit more into layman's terms for us. Basically, the prosecution, which is the office that Terry is running for re-election for, is basically there you have the judge who makes the decisions. Correct. Or a jury who makes decisions, and he's like a referee.
Yes.
And then you have the defense attorney and you have the prosecution.
Yes.
And the prosecution is the attorney that represents the state to help convict a person who is charged with a crime.
That's correct.
You guys don't get to decide if he's guilty or innocent or anything of that nature. You simply press charges and
advocate.
Present the case. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. During your time in office, I noticed you're advertising that you have quite a high conviction rate. I saw one of your flyers. You're advertising a high conviction rate for homicides.
Correct.
What is that number?
We've had 50 homicide convictions out of 52 cases.
Okay, well then you've answered my next question. So I saw the claim of 50, but 50 is only impressive because it's a relative number. If you've tried 200 of them and you've had 50 convictions, well, that's not such a great number. If I understand you correctly, you're saying you've had 52 total, and of those 52, you were able to get 50 convictions out of it.
That's correct. And the other 2, one of them, we never able to find the body, so we tried the case anyway because the family wanted us to give our best shot at justice. We lost that case. And then the second one was a hung jury, which means the jury couldn't agree. So we
Gotcha.
didn't really lose, but we didn't get a conviction either.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So another thing that I noticed that you have advertised is cold cases. You have been a part of closing some cold cases. Tell me just a little bit about that.
We've had approximately 7 cold cases ranging all the way back to 1975.
Okay.
There were cases that other prosecutors had decided there wasn't enough evidence or whatever. We reopened those cases, put a case together, filed them, and then were able to get convictions.
Oh, great. So you on those 7 cold cases, you actually got convictions?
Yes.
Okay. Next thing is, you mentioned something about funding a special court. I'm not sure that I fully understood it. If you could help explain that to the viewers and myself. Tell me just a little bit about that.
Sure. The last 2 years, there was not funding from the county for the drug court. And so we stepped up and made a decision that we would fund it, which was $50,000 each year for those 2 years. Because we thought it's important, because what the drug court does is it gives someone that's got drug charges a second chance. They are under stringent requirements to be drug tested, to go to counseling, to go to any drug programs. And if they pass all of that and stay clean the entire time, their criminal case is dismissed.
Great. So basically it helps alleviate the bogging down of the system for the jail itself and perhaps maybe rehabilitate somebody.
Yes.
Gotcha. One of the things that we are trying to do as a page is not just interview the candidates, but we're also trying to research some of your track record and some of what you've done for those of you that are incumbents. And in this case, you being an incumbent, I did go and do a little research. I reached out to Jana Sullivan. For those of you that don't know who Jana is Garrett Sand's mother, and Garrett was recently the victim of a shooting and unfortunately did not make it. And so while I did not know Jana prior to that situation, I would now consider her to be a friend and want to help her on her quest of reducing gun violence. And of course, that is something that hits close to home for me. And so it was very important to me to find out whether or not the prosecution, and in this case happens to be you guys, whether or not you guys were doing a good job and whether or not you were doing the best job that you could. And so I reached out to Jana and asked her, and I said, hey, I'm getting ready to interview Terry Modesitt. I need to know where you stand. And this part is more for the viewers and less for you. But she indicated to me that she was extremely happy with what the prosecution has done up to this point in the face of an incredible tragedy and the pain that she is going through and her family is going through. That she felt that the prosecution had been handling this as best they could and representing her in the best way possible. And she's very hopeful that you guys continue down the path that you have been and that you continue being vigorous in that case. So for that, I want to thank you on her behalf and hope that you will continue down that path. While I've had a chance to speak to Ms. Sullivan and I understand where she stands on this, I also have to represent the people who are watching our page. And so naturally part of what I do is I read forums and I want to know what people are thinking. And one of the things that comes out is, why are you letting him out? Why are you letting this person out on bond or that person out on bond or this person out early or not holding their feet to the fire? And I think that's probably a question all of us have to some degree. So while I commend you on the fact that Ms. Sullivan has said that she's very happy with what you're doing, I still have to ask you the tough questions. And so for the sake of our viewers, can you help us understand that?
Sure, a lot of people in the public don't understand the process. We don't let them out. All we're entitled to do is advocate in front of the judge to say we think they should not be let out or we think the bond should be X amount. The judge has the final say. And in that particular case, we've opposed every release of the defendant in court.
Gotcha. So help me understand just a little more. If I understand you correctly, you're saying that you guys go and you ask for X bond. And is that bond the max or is it somewhere in the middle? How do you determine what you're going to ask for?
Depends on how we feel, what our position is on the case.
Okay.
So like we can ask, on a murder case, there's no bond.
Okay.
On every other case, there's usually some bond unless there's a risk of flight or different things like that. But we the judge usually there will be a bond set at the jail. Usually there's a schedule. And then when we get into court, we can say, well, Your Honor, we think it should be higher. We think it should remain the same. Or if we think that it is deserving as such, we can say we think it should be lowered. In this particular case, we've opposed every bond reduction.
Gotcha. All right, so at the end of the day, this particular bond is out of your hands and decided by
Correct.
Someone else. I assume probably
By the judge.
A judge. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Do you have anything you would like to mention as far as the prosecutor race goes, or the election, or the office? Is there anything else that you want to mention?
I mean, I just think that, it's a position that everybody's got an opinion on. So it'd be kind of like if you talk to parents about how should they punish their children.
Right.
Some people think they should never be spanked. Other people think they should be spanked. Some people think they should just be put in timeout. Others think they should have things taken away from them. There's always opinions, but no one knows more about the facts of each individual case than we do. Obviously, we've got all the reports, etc. So it comes down to, I know that everybody has an opinion, and sometimes you have to make tough decisions in our position, but I always make the decision with the right heart and the right mindset of trying to do the right thing.
All right, so let me ask you one last question and then we'll wrap it up. Assuming you win, there's no question you're probably going to have more cases in the future that are surrounded by controversy. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to come in and do another interview as long as I don't ask you questions that that you're not allowed to answer to help the public understand what your position is and why you're doing what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Well, we want to thank you for coming in and doing the interview. We may or may not speak to your opponent. If he wants to come in to an interview, certainly we'll extend that offer to him as well.
Okay.
But we do thank you for coming in, and we wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Please hit your share button because that's how we get this out. We don't have funding for the channel. So the best thing we can do is ask you guys to hit your share button and get the message out. Take care.